Welcome back. So, around the end of Genesis chapter 17, there was a lot of penis mutilations. I basically ended the chapter with saying, fuck you to people who, you know, get their children circumcised. This is the kind of thing that's just like proof of the kind of harm that, comes from taking words from the Bible and, like, you know, thinking you should follow what they're saying. You know, this is why I'm doing these videos, is because of shit like this. So anyway, we're now in Genesis chapter 18. The Lord appeared again to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. One day Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. "My lord," he said, "if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet. And since you've honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue your journey." "All right," they said, "do as you have said." So Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah, "Hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread." Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. When the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. "Where is Sarah, your wife?" the visitors asked. It's funny, it says the visitors asked. Does that mean that they all 3 simultaneously were like, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" Because it doesn't, like, they're just 3 visitors. "She's inside the tent," Abraham replied. Then one of them said, "I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife, Sarah, will have a son." Sarah was listening to the conversation from the tent. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. Yeah, no shit, she's like 90 or something. So she laughed silently to herself and said, "How could a worn-out woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old?" It's interesting, she says, "My master, my husband." She's calling her husband her master. Oh my. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Can an old woman like me have a baby?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, "I didn't laugh." But the Lord said, "No, you did laugh." Then we transition over to, then the men got up from their meal and looked out towards Sodom. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way. And then we transition over to, "Should I hide my plan from Abraham?" the Lord asked. "For Abraham would certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham all that I have promised." So the Lord told Abraham, "I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah, because their sin is so flagrant. I am going down to see if their actions are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know." So basically we have the Lord, who, is assumably God. We've heard 3 different versions. We've heard God, Lord God, and, just plain old Lord. Either it's all supposed to be the same God, just different ways of saying it, or it's 3 different gods. I haven't seen too much information, too much evidence that there's 3 different gods, but, we look back at Genesis chapter 1 and 2, that was like 2 different creations, and, chapter 1, it was definitely God, chapter 2 is definitely Lord God. And the creations were completely different, so it really looked like 2 different creators. And so by any means, plain old Lord could also be his own separate God. I don't. It gets hard to keep track of them, that's for sure. God, Lord God, the Lord. But yeah, he's saying, I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so flagrant. I am going down to see if their actions are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know. So basically what we have here, if this is, just one God that we're talking about here, the way people view this God does not match the way the Bible represents him. People see him as all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful. And, we've established, like before, that he's not all-knowing and all-loving. You wipe out all sorts of life from the planet because you find it so despicable. That's not loving. Of course, the whole thing with being scared of Adam and Eve, and just like people in general, the way they work together, that kind of shows that he's not all powerful really. And now we have here proof that he's not all knowing. He's saying, I want to know. I've heard something. I want to find out if it's true. This is coming from the Lord, the God, basically. The other men turned and headed toward Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham. Abraham approached him and said, Will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living there in the city. Will you still sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying righteous along with the wicked. Why you would be treating the righteous and the wicked exactly the same? Surely you wouldn't do that. Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right? So Abraham's kind of questioning the Lord here. And the Lord's response is, and the Lord replied, If I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again, Since I have begun, let me speak further to my Lord. Even though I am but dust and ashes, suppose there are only 45 righteous people rather than 50. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And the Lord said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 righteous people there. Then Abraham pressed his request further. Suppose there are only 40. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 40. Please, don't be angry, my Lord, Abraham pleaded. Let me speak. Suppose only 30 righteous people are found. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if I find 30. Then Abraham said, Since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20. And the Lord replied, Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. Finally, Abraham said, Lord, please don't be angry with me if I speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found there. And the Lord replied, Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. When the Lord had finished his conversation with Abraham, he went on his way, and Abraham returned to his tent. So basically what we got out of that is that the Lord is saying he's not going to destroy the Sodomites and Gomorrites or whatever, unless every single one of them is wicked. Which, I think was basically the idea we were looking at with the whole, worldwide flood and, Noah's boat and stuff like that. Is that, he decided to spare Noah and his family because, he saw them as good and everyone else was evil and he wiped out everything. You ask me, it sounds kind of ridiculous and it's not really like a solution. It's just kind of like a dodge. It's like an easy way out. It's kind of pathetic if you ask me. So anyway, that was Genesis chapter 18. We'll be back with Genesis chapter. We'll be back with Genesis chapter 19. Peace out.